Breaking down both sides of the Saints and Eagles blockbuster trade, some exciting pre-draft visits for the Saints, welcoming in some top wide receiver prospects, and why moving up in the first round makes sense for the Saints, but maybe not necessarily for a quarterback. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we are free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. And on Monday, the New Orleans Saints and Philadelphia Eagles pull off a blockbuster trade ahead of the NFL draft, which now equips the New Orleans Saints with 2 first-round picks, 16 and 19. A lot of conversation has gone around the idea that the Saints may be sort of stacking assets so that they could make a big leap to go after a quarterback, which might require them to jump into the top 10 in order to get ahead of some other quarterback-hungry teams like the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, maybe even the Seattle Seahawks, or other teams that may look to trade into the top 10. So the Saints are positioned well to be able to move into the top 10 if they want to. And listen, a trade forward makes sense. I'm just not fully certain that a trade forward makes sense for quarterback. Now, we're seeing it reported all over the place, and of course, we're going to talk about the possibility of them doing it as if it is a reality because this team has every option available to them. They can do anything, right? They can move into the top 10 for a tackle if they want to, which might not be a bad idea if they decide that, guys like Neal or Ikem Ekwonu are better suited for their offense than Trevor Penning and Charles Cross, or even Charles Cross, who's a potential top 10 talent. That's one of the best pure pass blockers in this draft. So for the Saints, I think that a move up or another move up does make a lot of sense. But again, I don't think packaging 16 and 19 makes the most sense for them, right? You are in a position now where you have Jameis Winston coming back. And despite what some people may believe that Andy Dalton, I've seen so many people, and it's kind of driving me nuts, people thinking that Andy Dalton is somehow the starter for the Saints in 2022. It makes no sense to me. But Jameis Winston is your starter in 2022. And the Saints seem to be very much engaged with the idea of Jameis Winston as their starter in 2022. So making a move for a quarterback kind of flies in the face of that, although he does have an out after this year, could play so well in 2022 that he ends up pricing himself out of New Orleans over the course of the offseason, as he has that out in his contract before 2023, even though it is a 2-year contract. But I tend to believe that even in that case, the New Orleans Saints could get Jameis Winston to stick around, right? Because Jameis would sort of feel like, he explained it to all of us, right? He canceled a private jet in terms of a tour, an opportunity to go and see what the Indianapolis Colts had to offer so that he could stay in New Orleans, which was his preferred destination. And there's no reason to believe that with a successful season, especially if the team uses pick 16 and 19 to put weapons around him, which was, by the way, Drew Brees' suggestion as well, that he would leave, right? Knowing that the team invested in him the way that they have, especially with these assets that they now have within the top 50 and top 100. So with that being the case, I see a very clear argument against the idea of moving up again in order to get a quarterback. Now, if a quarterback falls to you at 16 and you feel like that's a position that you can't pass up, sure, I'm not necessarily about it, but doesn't matter what I think, right? Doesn't matter what I'm about. It matters what the team's about. And the team is the only one that knows what the team wants to do with their draft capital. Nobody else knows. So for the Saints, another move up could make sense, right? Going from 16 to 12 with the Minnesota Vikings, a common trade partner on draft days for the New Orleans Saints, could make sense if they want to make sure that they get their tackle. If they make sure that they want to get, or they want to jump up and maybe go after a falling Malik Willis, like we all thought they were going after a falling Lamar Jackson back in 2018. There's an opportunity for something like that. Now, I don't believe that Malik Willis falls, but if there is some type of inexplicable fall, the Saints have every option available. So they have the fodder, the capital to be able to take advantage of something like that if that happens. Draft day is wild. You never know what's going to happen. So the Saints are sort of prepared for any scenario. If the top 4 tackles are off the board, including Charles Cross, Ikem Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Trevor Penning, then they could pivot and go to a quarterback if Kenny Pickett is still on the board. If the 2 quarterbacks are off the board, but there's a tackle there, then they're in good position at 16. If they see a run on tackles, they're in a good position now to jump up to make sure that they don't get their last tackle snatched from them. So I don't necessarily think that a trade up for quarterback is something that the Saints are completely fixated on. It's a possibility, and it's something that if the board falls right, that they might try to take advantage of, but a trade up for a tackle also makes a ton of sense. There's no need to move up for a wide receiver. Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and let's say Drake London could all come off the board before the Saints get up at 16 or 19, including the Philadelphia Eagles who pick at 18 now. Then okay, shucks, I guess I'll just have to take Treylon Burks. It's not a big deal, right, when it comes to wide receiver. Even some of these other guys that are a little bit unsung, like Jahan Dotson, could still be very, very good wide receiver round 1 talent. Or you wait until the 2nd round to go and grab yourself a wide receiver, because if all those wide receivers end up going, then very likely some very important defensive piece has fallen, or some very important quarterback has fallen, or some very important offensive tackle has fallen. The Saints are in perfect position here to really have the flexibility that they want to do whatever it is that they need. Heck, they could trade back out of 19 if they wanted to and wait around and grab Christian Watson at the end of the 1st round just so that they get the rookie contract and they get the 5th-year option on him. They're in a really, really good position here. So I promised that we would take a look at the idea of trading up into the top 10 for a quarterback, but the fact of the matter is that your real only trade partners within the top 10 are maybe the New York Giants, because you want to get ahead of the Carolina Panthers if you're trying to trade up for any quarterback, right? For your pick of the litter at quarterback. And the team that really is there for you to trade up with would be the New York Giants, who have 5 and 7. And then if you wanted to get ahead of making sure that Atlanta or Seattle doesn't pull the trigger on Kenny Pickett after Malik Willis is off the board, potentially at 6 to the Panthers, then you would trade up with the New York Giants at 7. If either one of those quarterbacks escapes all of those other NFC South teams and the Seattle Seahawks, then you maybe move up to 10 with the New York Giants. And in any case, it's going to cost you a lot, probably both of those 1st-round picks, and you might have to come up out of a 2024 first as well. So for the Saints, even if we explore the idea, or even as we explore the idea of moving up for a quarterback, it's going to be a king's ransom. And it's not worth it, because then you end up gutting the rest of this draft. And the intent that you saw from the Saints in moving up and doing what they did, taking one of their 2023 1st-round picks and turning them into a 2022 1st-round pick, that's going to allow them to build with starters and build with bona fide talent on the offensive side of the ball, I believe, will be their target. So for me, it's tackle and wide receiver, and tackle. That's a target, maybe at 16, 19, or maybe one of those picks moves up. I don't necessarily know that it's quarterback, though quarterback could be one of those picks. I don't know that the real intent here of what the New Orleans Saints did was to package those 2 picks and try to make another jump up to pick up a quarterback. But that could just be me. We'll explore those possibilities a little bit more with Louie DiBiase of Locked On Eagles here in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about the New Orleans Saints pre-draft visit. Some exciting names, wide receivers that you know and love from this year's draft class on airline visiting the New Orleans Saints here recently. We'll talk about them, who they are, as well as another big visit for a potential free agent on airline earlier this week. We got all that and much more coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at Shady Rays. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you all the quality of those $200 pair of sunglasses that you always lose without paying $200. So much more cost effective while still giving you high polarization, while still giving you those like double built reinforced frames that keep them from breaking. And best of all, this insane protection plan that they have. If you're like me, you lose your sunglasses all the time. Every one of those name brand sunglasses that I bought, I lost, right? They're not ones that I got tired of or that I gave to somebody else. Nope, I lost every single one of them. Not embarrassed to admit it, because it happens to all of us and it happens to you too. Here's the deal when it comes to Shady Rays. You let them know, I need a replacement pair of sunglasses because I lost them, they broke, whatever it might be, and they'll send them to you for free. No questions asked. Doesn't matter what happened to them. They're going to replace them for you for free with their outstanding protection plan. And if you just plain don't like them within the first few days that you have them, they'll give you your money back as well. So go and check them out, because the other piece of this that's really, really cool is that for every pair of Shady Rays that you buy, they end up donating 10 meals to fight hunger in America. So you get to look good and support a good cause. So head over to shadyrays.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON so you can get 50% off of 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays polarized sunglasses. That is code LOCKEDON for the best deal of the season. 50% off with 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by 150,000 verified 5-star reviews, including mine. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks so much, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that Locked On NFL YouTube page as well. Luke Braun and I yesterday breaking down that Saints and Eagles blockbuster trade, so you can get a little bit more of the national perspective over there, as well as the Eagles perspective, which we will get later on here in just a moment when Louie DiBiase of Locked On Eagles joins us for our crossover segment here in a bit. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the visits for the New Orleans Saints, because there have been some big names visiting the New Orleans Saints that you are going to love. The first of which that I want to talk about is a free agent visit, and then we're going to get to those big name wide receivers that have been visiting for them. The Saints doing exactly what they need to be doing at this point in the NFL draft, or this point in the NFL offseason, as the news cycle around the New Orleans Saints has just exploded. You had the big trade here. You had the signing of Taco Charlton. You had the signing of Justin Evans. You had the signing of JP Holtz as well. But I mean, now you look at what the Saints have done over the course of the past few 24 hours, 48 hours, but whenever it might be that you're listening to this. And the Saints also brought in Tyrann Mathieu, safety, formerly of the LSU Tigers, formerly most recently of the Kansas City Chiefs, to come in for a visit. Now, there was no reason to expect that the visit would immediately lead to a signing. I doubt Tyrann Mathieu signs anywhere until the draft is over, it sounds like. And so with that being the case, this was a nice little information gathering session to kind of get acquainted with one another. Mickey Loomis, Gail Benson, Jeff Ireland, Dennis Allen, all of them getting the opportunity to meet with Tyrann Mathieu, who was in town and has been in town. He spoke at, LSU, and he was doing some other community events and everything as well. And he's been spending his time in New Orleans, of course, a New Orleans native himself. And I have to say that signing Tyrann Mathieu, if the Saints were able to find a way to pull that off, because he is going to ask for some big money here, but if they found a way to pull that off, that would be a humongous win for them this offseason. I mean, losing Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins is huge, but being able to replace them with Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, and knowing that you're probably going to be without Marcus May for a little while, so you went out and you got PJ Williams back, that's a really, really good situation to be in. I'm not saying that it's an upgrade at all. We'll have to see the play on the field and how they translate to the system, but man, it gives you a lot of really good potential on a position or on the back end of your defense where you lost some really, really good talent this offseason. So that's a really fantastic, look for the New Orleans Saints to bring Tyrann Mathieu to New Orleans, get him in on airline, get him in on the facility, and then get him on that tour. Again, the visit's over. There's no contract imminent at this point or anything like that, but it doesn't sound like that was really the goal. It sounded like it's maybe part of a process here, as it seems that Tyrann Mathieu is in no hurry to sign. But I'll tell you what, if the New Orleans Saints come out of the end of the NFL draft, right, the day after the NFL draft when the compensatory pick formula is no longer relevant, and they end up signing Tyrann Mathieu and signing one of the names I'm about to tell you in the draft, or drafting one of the names I'm about to tell you, we're talking about a big time tone change to the New Orleans Saints offseason, because the other names that I want to tell you about are the 3 wide receivers that the New Orleans Saints welcomed in for pre-draft visits, including Alabama's Jameson Williams, Arkansas's Treylon Burks, and Western Michigan's Skyy Moore. Now, 2 of these guys are first-round prospects. The other one is a very, very underrated prospect. Of course, Jameson Williams and Treylon Burks, both first-round prospects. Skyy Moore, probably a second-round guy, but I have not heard a wide receiver talked up more in this draft than Skyy Moore has been. And I think that makes perfect sense. But these 3 wide receivers are very, very different wide receivers. Jameson Williams and Treylon Burks are both absolute field stretchers, right? They can be those field-stretching, deep threat guys that benefit from a big arm like this is always going to be tough for me. Jameis Winston throwing to Jameson Williams. And I hope I get to struggle with that for the rest of time because it would just be such a good complementary pair, receiver and quarterback. Now, Jamison Williams does it a bit different than Treylon Burks, right? Jamison Williams is a speedy guy that is explosive. And both these guys are really good at producing after the catch. They just do it in different ways. Jamison Williams outruns everybody. Treylon Burks can outrun you, but he can also run through you as well at 6'3", 225 pounds. Jamison Williams comes in under all the thresholds, really, for the New Orleans Saints. But what do we know about the thresholds going into the Dennis Allen era now that we've gone post-Peyton, right? They might be coming down. So if that's the case, Jameson Williams because of what he provides you elsewhere, speed, ability to take the top off of a defense, long speed, all the things that he gives you, and his ability to turn a 4-yard pass into a 50-yard gain, you've probably been the prototype a little bit. We've seen the Saints do it before. Brandon Cooks came in well under every prototype for the New Orleans Saints in terms of the physical sort of attributes, but 4.33 speed or whatever it was. I mean, that's going to be it. And Jameson Williams didn't get to run at the combine, didn't get to run at his pro day as he's recovering from that ACL injury that he suffered during the national championship game. But we all know, everyone knows, you've seen the tape, and the New Orleans Saints have seen the tape 16, 17, 18,000 times over. They know what Jameson Williams can do. So I love the fact that they brought him in, got to look at him, because it gives you an idea seeing him in person. And this is why all the COVID rules and everything being over are such a good thing for NFL teams, particularly the New Orleans Saints, who have dealt with a lot of soft tissue injuries here recently. When you're investing in a wide receiver at that position that has suffered that specific injury, you want to see him in person. You want to get a look at how's the mobility, how's your change of direction, how are you impacted while you're recovering from this. So great stuff to see the New Orleans Saints bringing in Alabama's Jameson Williams to get a look at him. Arkansas's Treylon Burks, I can't rave enough. He hits every prototype. His 4.55 40-yard dash that everybody's talking about and everybody's kind of doubting him because of is not too slow for the New Orleans Saints. You remember Michael Thomas was 4.57, and you can look at Treylon Burks' tape, which is going to hold more water to NFL scouts than their 40 time, right? Than their ability to run in a straight line in underwear. And so you can see it, right? You could see him burning not only defenders, but SEC defenders at that, NFL talent in college, right? So with all of that, I think both of those guys are big time opportunities for you. And either one of them could be had at 16 or potentially 19, right? Because again, you have 5 or 6 different first-round wide receivers, and with Drake London not running his 40 until you get to, April 15th, I think is his rescheduled pro day, his sort of personal pro day, people aren't going to start talking about him yet. But then eventually people are going to start talking about him. Now, the NFL teams already probably know, do they like Drake London? Do they not like Drake London? And his 40 time doesn't matter at all. But for the rest of like the analysts and media and stuff like that, everybody's waiting on the 40 time. So when you see the stock raise for a guy like Drake London, that ends up pushing one of these other guys down. And that's good news for the New Orleans Saints. Skyy Moore could be a guy that could be had in the second round. Pick 49 potentially. I think you probably have to trade up to the early portion of the second round to get him. He is like the worst kept secret of this NFL draft class. But he's somebody that gives you that yards after catch, really good hands, very technical route runner, really precise. These guys, all 3 of them are playmakers, and that's what the New Orleans Saints need on the offensive side. And that is one of the many reasons that I continue to say I don't think that the New Orleans Saints should trade out of 16 or 19, both, right? Trade up from one of them if you need to get the guy that you really want. I get that. You're already positioned ahead of the Los Angeles Chargers, who need that tackle. So you're in good position there if you want to just move up a little bit more to make sure you get the tackle you want. But outside of that, at wide receiver at 19 makes perfect sense. And these are actually 3 possible options there, although Skyy Moore very likely more so an early day 2 guy. Okay. So New Orleans Saints doing all the right things when it comes to the pre-draft visit so far, bringing in Tyrann Mathieu. Like I mentioned, if they walk away with Tyrann Mathieu and one of these guys by the end of the NFL draft or the day after the NFL draft, we are all very happy about the New Orleans Saints offseason. But now let's hear from both sides of this blockbuster trade, New Orleans Saints and the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Eagles now pick at 15 and 18, which are conveniently right before the Saints at 16 and 19. So what does that mean? Louie DiBiase of Locked On Eagles helps us figure it all out. We'll talk about that and visit with him as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Before we get to it, I want to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. I keep telling you about this brownie battle, Built Bar. I cannot get over this thing. This is so good. I had a dream about it the other day. No, I'm kidding. I'm not that obsessed, but it's that good. It's that good that if I dreamed about a protein bar, this would be the protein bar I dream about. It's that simple. And that really goes for all Built Bars. Mint brownie, which is one of my absolute favorites. Peanut butter brownie, which is like everyone's favorite. Everyone loves peanut butter. Well, unless you're allergic to peanuts. Sorry. But you know what I mean. They have something for everybody over there, including, by the way, nut-free bars. So you don't have to worry about that if you have a peanut allergy. Then they also have the Built Puffs, which are awesome. Protein-infused marshmallow. Yeah, you heard me. Protein-infused marshmallow. They figured out a way to do it, which include flavors like that brownie batter, but they also have churro. They've got coconut marshmallow, and they've got banana cream pie as well. So go and check them out. I know it sounds good. I can hear your mouths watering from here. It's gross. Stop it. Go and take care of it. Get it taken care of over at Built.com and use that promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, so you can get 15% off of your order. Don't forget, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off over at Built.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a visit from our good friend Louie DiBiase of Locked On Eagles. He and I breaking down this trade from both the Saints and Eagles side, and Louie gives you a little bit of insight in terms of what the Philadelphia Eagles are looking to do at 15 and 18, right ahead of the Saints at 16 and 19. Some valuable stuff. Here we go.
Ross, your overall thoughts? I mean, the Eagles, we're kind of used to this now 2 years in a row. General Manager Howie Roseman, he is creating flexibility in the draft, and I think especially for the quarterback future. Where is the Saints head at with this move to give up picks for, in the future for more firsts this year in this class?
Yeah, look, I think this trade helps both of these teams out in terms of what their mentality may be going into this. I think it's glaringly obvious that one of these teams values this year's draft more than the other team, or I guess maybe as much as the other team values next year's draft. Philly being the latter there, which makes a lot of sense because you get another year in terms of the quarterback situation, while New Orleans maybe looking to address the quarterback situation a little bit more rapidly, right? I don't think that it means that they're going to package 16 and 19 to move up into the top 10, but it certainly gives them an opportunity, having 16 and 19, to use one of those picks to move up a little bit in the first round and make sure that they land their guy, and then also allow them to be able to land a wide receiver with that other selection, which is a spot they absolutely need an immediate impact player.
Yeah, Ross, that's what I was going to ask you. It feels like quarterback has to do with this, although, going to, 16 and 19, that's not a super high jump. So you're like, is that really having to do with quarterback? But the Eagles know in 2016, Howie Roseman jumped from the 12th overall pick to 8, and then from 8 to 2, leapfrogging twice to get Carson Wentz in that draft class. So I was going to ask you if quarterback is, at the forefront. I say that though, but at the same time in 2018, when the Saints moved up, I thought, okay, that's for Lamar Jackson, and it was for Marcus Davenport.
Same. Yeah, absolutely. So it's got to be one of those deals, right? I think the most telling piece of all this is that they gave up, the Saints did, the first round pick next year. While Philly's deferring their first round pick to next year, the Saints swap out a first round pick for next year for a first round pick this year. So next year, where that draft class of quarterbacks, 2023, is supposed to be really, really good, while the Saints might not have a quarterback going into 2023, depending upon how the contract for Jameis Winston works out and how Jameis Winston works out, the Saints could be looking instead to swap basically and get to that rookie quarterback and get to that nice, sweet rookie quarterback contract faster than, waiting around for another year or a couple of years. From the Philadelphia Eagles perspective, does this feel like this is an opportunity for the Eagles to see another year of Jalen Hurts before they dive into the quarterback spot?
I think that's exactly what it is. I think they tried for Russell Wilson and maybe even kicked the tires on Deshaun Watson. I think that had more to do with Wilson and Watson not seeing the Eagles as a fit with those no trade clauses. So once those two options were out the window, I don't think the Eagles love this 2022 quarterback class. I'm a bigger fan, I think, than most of the class. Don't think the Eagles were. I think they wanted that optionality of seeing Hurts for another year, because while he didn't take the step in year 2, he did take, gradual improvements last year. I think the Saints themselves saw a much better Hurts in 2021 than 2022, or I should say 2020. But at the same time, they know they're realistic about Hurts. They didn't take him in the second round of 2020 to be a starter. It was supposed to be Carson Wentz's long-term backup. So they want that optionality in what is seen as a better class in 2023. But Ross, I will warn Eagles fans, there's a lot of teams that have multiple first-round picks next year. And you got to get lucky that a team at the top for, everybody's thinking now CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, it takes 2 to tango to do a deal. And if the teams at the top need quarterbacks, it doesn't matter what you're willing to give up. They're going to take those players. So if you're going to make this move with quarterback at the forefront, you got to be comfortable with at least 3 prospects next year to be comfortable moving up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for the Eagles, getting this 2023 first round selection from the Saints, they're obviously hoping that that's an earlier selection, which gives them a little bit more mobility. But for the Saints, you only make this move if you think you're going to be able to be a competitive team in a very weak NFC conference. But the Eagles could potentially play spoiler to that in a way, right? 15 and 18, while the Saints pick at 16 and 19. What are the positions that the Eagles might be targeting that Saints fans should be aware of, knowing that at least as of right now, they're back-to-back with Philly twice?
The Eagles always commit those high assets in the trenches, the offensive and defensive line, even if they don't really have immediate needs at those spots. I thought when they had 3 first-round picks, okay, maybe they'd be a little more open-minded to a safety or a linebacker, positions they don't normally invest those high picks in. But now that you have 1 fewer first, I think expect at least one defensive or offensive lineman. And then I think receiver and corner are the other two spots they really like to invest high picks in. They really prioritize everything that's about the passing game, quarterback, protecting the quarterback, going after the quarterback, and then who's throwing to him and who's stopping the receivers. So I think for Jalen Hurts, if you want to give him the best opportunity in 2022, getting him another receiver with one of those two picks is something to keep a close eye on. I'd say receiver, corner, and then the trenches. But I think for Eagles fans that want a linebacker or a safety really bad, probably have to wait for day 2 and day 3.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think I don't know if you heard it, but all the Saints fans just breathed a sigh of relief hearing that Philly was interested in offensive and defensive linemen, because there is nothing that Saints fans want less than the Saints investing one of those picks in an offensive or defensive lineman. Saints fans would love for them to go back-to-back at wide receiver in this situation. But it's a good thing for New Orleans in that case, because it keeps their probably top 2 priorities, quarterback and wide receiver, even if Philly takes a wide receiver before 19,
right,
when the Saints are back up on the clock. This draft class is deep enough where 3 or 4 of those guys could come off and they could still walk away with a Drake London or a Treylon Burks or any, a Garrett Wilson or whatever, right? Any of those guys that don't go. So that's good news for them. I love your point, though, about bolstering the offense, because that benefits not only Jalen Hurts in 2022, but potentially a quarterback in 2023 if they go that route. I think the Saints are thinking the exact same way. Use this pick to maybe gather their future plan, but also find a way to impact themselves immediately and that quarterback in the future.
So Ross, just last thing here on the quarterback, going back for the Saints, because I am fascinated with this 2022 class. Maybe they are just moving up in this range and they think the guy they like would be available. Maybe, they know, or everybody thinks Malik Willis is going top 5, maybe even as early as 2 to the Detroit Lions. You mentioned Kenny Pickett. You've got Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral. Is there a name? Is it Pickett that people are really talking about? If it's quarterback for the Saints, that's the name people are talking about?
Yeah, Pickett's the one that most are speaking of. You look at him, he checks all the boxes from the Bill Parcells quarterback commandments, which is a big part of what the New Orleans Saints do in terms of in terms of scouting their quarterbacks. But look, if a guy like Malik Willis, kind of like Lamar Jackson in that 2018 class, ends up taking this inexplicable fall, I don't expect the New Orleans Saints to pass on him.
It'd be fitting.
It would make a ton of sense, right? It would kind of be them righting their wrongs, kind of like they did with the recently retired Malcolm Jenkins, who I know we're both, of course, very big fans of in terms of his time with both of our franchises. So I think that if Malik Willis were to fall, I think that's a place where they jump. All right, family. Once again, that is Louie DiBiase of Locked On Eagles. He and his friend Gino Camilleri, co-host over at the show, doing a phenomenal job covering the Eagles. And we're having a blast covering the New Orleans Saints as the news mill just continues to turn for this team. So we'll continue to keep up with it. We've got more to look at in terms of some of these pre-draft visits. We've got more to look at in terms of what the New Orleans Saints can do at 16 and 19. I'm going to give you my ideal mock draft tomorrow. And we're also going to talk with Luke Braun about the potential of trading up a little bit to make sure that we get the guy that we want, right? While we play the New Orleans Saints in that scenario. So we got all that coming up for you tomorrow, and we're going to be joined by some national experts to help break this down from a 30,000-foot view as well. So you don't want to miss any of that. So make sure you are subscribed and ready to go here on Locked On Saints. I appreciate you, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel and, of course, the podcast, wherever you get the podcast. Eric and Ryan just dropped an updated mock draft as I'm recording this, which has the Saints picking at 16 and 19. Go see what they did over at the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, And we'll, of course, break that down here later on this week as well. As always, y'all, I appreciate you for making me a part of your day and a part of your routine for everything you need around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.